The lawyer cleared his throat, looked down at the paper, then looked at me. To my granddaughter Margot Whitlock, I leave the sum of $1. $1. The room went quiet for half a second. Then the laughter started. My cousin Preston laughed the loudest. He actually threw his head back, his $5,000 suit shaking on his shoulders. His wife pressed a manicured hand to her mouth and giggled into her diamonds. And my ex-husband Garrett, sitting in the back row like he had any right to be there, smirking into his coffee cup like Christmas had come early. I felt my cheeks burn. I felt the cheap fabric of my second-hand dress sticking to my back. I felt 32 years of being the family disappointment crash down on me all at once. "Are you serious?" Preston wheezed. $1. That's it. The lawyer didn't smile, didn't frown. His name was Sterling Ashford, mid-50s, silver at the temples, wire-rimmed glasses that caught the chandelier light. He slid a single coin across the polished mahogany table toward me. A commemorative dollar, my grandfather's initials engraved on the edge. C.W. Cornelius Whitlock, the man who used to hold my hand at the library when I was 10 years old, the man who once told me I was the smartest person in our entire family, the man who apparently thought I was worth exactly $1. I reached for the coin. My fingers trembled. I hated that they trembled. Preston leaned across the table. "Don't spend it all in one place, Maggie." He winked. He actually winked. Something in me wanted to scream, or throw the coin at his perfect orthodontic smile, or stand up and tell every single person at that table what I really thought of them. But I didn't, because I'm Margot Whitlock, and Margot Whitlock doesn't make scenes. I closed my fingers around the coin, picked up my purse, stood up. "Thank you, Mr. Ashford." That's all I said. I walked out of that conference room with my head high, through the marble hallway, past the receptionist with her pity smile, out into the parking garage where my 15-year-old Honda waited with its cracked windshield and its mismatched hubcaps and its check engine light that had been on for 2 years. I sat down behind the wheel. I locked the doors, and then I cried. Not loud, not pretty, just a thin, shaking sob that came up from somewhere deep and old. The kind of crying you do when you've already cried out every loud cry you have left in you, and all that's left is the quiet kind. The coin sat in my palm, cold, small, useless. My phone buzzed. The babysitter. Wren had a fever. Could I come home soon? I wiped my face with the back of my hand, put the coin in my apron pocket, the same apron I'd be wearing in 3 hours when I clocked in at the Magnolia Diner for the dinner rush. And I drove home, because that's what you do. You drive home. The Magnolia Diner. 8 o'clock that night. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The smell of burnt coffee and bacon grease soaked into my hair, into my skin, into the polyester uniform that had been washed so many times the color had given up. "Order up Margot." I balanced 3 plates along my arm, navigated between booths, smiled at a trucker who tipped in pennies, smiled at an old couple celebrating their 50th anniversary, smiled at a teenage boy who asked for extra ketchup 4 times. Smile, smile, smile. Because tips meant rent. Tips meant Wren's antibiotics. Tips meant Theo's school field trip permission slip that I hadn't been able to sign yet because there wasn't enough in the account. Tips meant survival. And tomorrow morning, in 12 hours, I was walking into a courtroom to fight for the right to keep raising my own children. So I smiled. The dollar coin pressed against my thigh through the apron pocket. A small, hard reminder that I was officially on my own. "Working hard, honey?" the old man in booth 6 asked. "Every day," I said. He smiled. His wife patted my hand. They left me a $12 tip on a $16 bill. I almost cried again. I didn't. I just kept walking. Let me tell you about my children. Theo is 13. Red hair like mine. Quiet. Serious. He builds things, drones, robots' little engines out of paper clips and rubber bands. He hides in his room with his laptop and pretends he doesn't need anyone. But sometimes late at night I catch him standing in my doorway, just watching me sleep, making sure I'm still there. Ren is 8. Dark curls, loud laugh. She talks to flowers, names every stray cat in the neighborhood, cries when she sees roadkill, really truly believes that her mama can do anything. I would walk through fire for them. I have walked through fire for them. When Garrett asked for the divorce 3 years ago, I thought I could keep us afloat on tips alone. I was wrong. When the rent went up and the car broke down, and Theo's school called about overdue lunch fees, I picked up a second job cleaning houses on Sundays. When that wasn't enough, I sold my wedding ring, my grandmother's silver tea set, the little gold cross I'd been baptized in. I sold everything that wasn't bolted down, except the children. I would never sell the children. But the court doesn't see love. The court sees square footage. The court sees income brackets. The court sees a 1-bedroom apartment where mama sleeps on a pull-out couch. Morning came too fast. I put on my navy blue dress from the consignment shop, the one with the little stain near the hem I'd tried to hide with a brooch. I put on the heels I hadn't sold yet. I brushed my hair until it shone. I put on lipstick, coral, the cheap kind from the drugstore. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked like a woman about to lose her children. Stop it. Stop it, Margot. I straightened my shoulders, picked up my purse, slid the dollar coin into the inside pocket, because I needed a reminder of what the world thought I was worth, so I could go out and prove the world wrong. The courthouse was 45 minutes away. I made it in 38. Courtroom 3. The benches were hard. The air smelled like floor polish and old paper. Garrett sat across the aisle in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. His lawyer, a silver-haired man named Whitaker, was whispering in his ear, and Garrett was nodding the way he nodded when he was pretending to listen. I knew that nod. I'd been married to that nod for 9 years. All rise. Judge Harriet Klein swept in. Reading glasses, tight bun, eyes that had seen everything twice. My public defender, Marcia Delgado, squeezed my hand under the table. "It's going to be okay," Marcia whispered. She was lying. We both knew she was lying. The evaluator's report had already been filed. I'd read it 3 times last night, sitting at my kitchen table with a glass of cheap wine I couldn't really afford. Mother demonstrates devoted bond with children. Mother resides in inadequate housing. Mother works variable shifts. Mother lacks financial stability. Lacks. The word kept showing up, like a verdict, like a brand. Judge Klein read from her notes. Her voice was kind, but kindness in a courtroom is a knife. Mr. Sinclair provides health insurance, private school, a 4-bedroom home, maternal grandmother nearby for childcare support. I stopped breathing. Ms. Whitlock is clearly devoted to her children. However, the most expensive word in the English language, However, the court must consider stability as the primary factor. Marcia tried to object. Marcia tried to mention the night classes, the resumes, the assistant manager applications. Marcia tried. The judge listened. The judge denied. Primary physical custody is granted to Mr. Sinclair. Ms. Whitlock will have visitation every other weekend and 1 dinner visit per week. The gavel came down. 6 days a month. I would see my own children 6 days a month. I didn't stand. Couldn't stand. The room tilted. The fluorescent lights buzzed louder. Marcia was saying something. Appeal. Reconsideration. 6 months. Document everything. But her voice came through water. And then I saw Wren. Not in the courtroom, in my head. Wren standing in the parking lot last weekend, holding a wilted dandelion she'd picked just for me. Wren saying, "Mama, when I'm with you, my heart feels full. When I'm with you, my heart feels full." Garrett walked past me on his way out. He paused. "I'll have Theo call you tonight," he said, voice low, almost gentle. "Maybe this will motivate you to get your life together." He kept walking. I kept sitting. Marcia kept talking. And the dollar coin in my purse felt heavier than the entire courthouse on top of me. I don't remember walking out of the building. I just remember the rain. It had started without me noticing. Soft at first, then steady. The marble steps were slick. I stood at the top of them, holding my purse with both hands like it might float away if I let go. A car pulled up to the curb. Black, sleek, Audi. A man got out with an umbrella. Sterling Ashford. He climbed the steps 2 at a time, holding the umbrella over me. "Ms. Whitlock." "How did you know?" My voice was flat. Dead. I just lost everything. I have friends in the courthouse. You called me yesterday about the inheritance, about the coin. I don't have time for whatever this is. Not today. That's why it has to be today. I almost laughed. Almost. "Mr. Ashford, I got $1. I got humiliated. I got laughed at by half my family. Whatever sick joke my grandfather was playing. He wasn't joking. Then what was he doing?" Sterling Ashford looked at me. Just looked. And there was something in his eyes that I hadn't seen all morning. Not pity. Not pity at all. It was respect. 2 hours, Ms. Whitlock. That's all I'm asking. 2 hours. And what I'm going to show you may change everything. Especially for Theo and Wren. He said my children's names. That stopped me. Because nobody had said my children's names today. Not the judge, not Marcia, not Garrett. Just this stranger, in the rain, holding an umbrella. "Where?" I whispered. "About an hour from here, Hawthorne County, a place your grandfather built." Built. For you. I shouldn't have gotten in the car. A reasonable woman. A woman with sense. A woman who'd been through what I'd been through that morning would have said no. Would have gone home. Would have curled up on the pull-out couch and cried for 3 days straight. But I wasn't a reasonable woman anymore. I was a woman who had nothing left to lose. I got in the car. The city fell away behind us. First the suburbs, then the strip malls, then the highway with its gray rain and its long silences. Sterling didn't push, didn't fill the air with chatter. He just drove. I watched the world turn from concrete to trees. "My grandfather," I finally said. He hadn't called me in 5 years. He thought about you every single day. How would you know that? Sterling glanced at me. Because I was the one who answered the phone when he wanted to call you. Every birthday, every Christmas, and every single time at the last second he hung up. I turned to face him. Why? He was ashamed. Of what? Of the way your family treated you, of the way he allowed it to happen. He told me once, and I'll never forget this. He said, Sterling, the only one of them with any soul left, is the one they laugh at. The road blurred. My eyes blurred. The rain kept falling. He used to read me books, I whispered. At the library, when I was small. I know, Sterling said. He kept your library card. He kept every letter you ever wrote him. He had a lockbox in his office. I've seen it. He kept my letters. All of them, including a town you designed when you were 10, sustainable architecture, solar panels, a community garden in the center. I started to cry, quietly, without sound, the way I'd been crying all day. I remember that project. He remembered it too. Where are we going, Mr. Ashford? Somewhere you've been before, Miss Whitlock. You just don't know it yet. We crested a hill. Sterling pulled the car onto a gravel scenic overlook, turned off the engine. The wipers stopped and the rain ticked softly on the roof. He turned to face me. Before we go any further, may I see the coin? I took it out of my purse, held it up. He examined it, turned it under the dome light, nodded once. Then he pointed through the windshield. Look. I leaned forward. Below us, in a green valley carved out by a slow, silver river, I saw at first nothing, just trees, just hills. And then I saw the rooftops, small ones, dozens of them, scattered through the forest like wooden mushrooms, connected by winding gravel paths, solar panels glinting between the leaves, a small dam at the head of the river, white water foaming over its lip. A community, a whole community, hidden in the woods. What is that? I breathed. Sterling started the engine again. That, Ms. Whitlock, is Willowbrook's sanctuary, and it belongs to you. The road wound down into the valley like a ribbon. I held the coin in my fist so tight my knuckles ached. A gate appeared, wrought iron, tall, elegant. The words Willowbrook Sanctuary arched across the top in hand-forged letters. There was a keypad beside the gate, and next to the keypad a small circular slot, exactly the size of a coin. Sterling rolled down his window, reached his hand out. May I? I gave him the $1. He pressed it into the slot. The gate swung open, silent, smooth, like it had been waiting. The coin, he said quietly, is the key, quite literally. I couldn't speak. We drove through. The forest opened into a clearing, a stone fountain in the center, the water running clear despite the rain. Around the perimeter, a community center with a wide front porch, a bell tower, garden beds, a workshop, a schoolhouse with painted shutters, and people standing in the rain, watching the car, 20, 30, maybe more. They weren't startled. They weren't suspicious. They were waiting. Do they? I started. They've been waiting 15 years, Sterling said. He parked the car. I sat with my hands in my lap, my makeup ruined, my dress damp, my hair coming undone, my eyes red, my heart broken in 3 different places. I can't go out there. Look at me. Sterling reached over, Gently. He didn't touch me. He just put his hand on the door handle next to mine. "They are not looking at your dress, Ms. Whitlock." "Then what are they looking at?" "At their future." I opened the door. The rain had softened to mist. A woman stepped forward from the small crowd. 60-something. Silver hair pulled into a thick braid down her back. Weathered face, strong hands, eyes the color of river stones. She walked right up to me and smiled. "Margot Whitlock," she said. "We've been waiting for you a long time. I'm Eleanor Brooks." I shook her hand. Hers was warm, mine was ice. "I don't understand any of this." "I know," Eleanor said. "Neither did we at first. Come inside, we've got coffee, and there's a letter for you." "A letter?" "From your grandfather. He left strict instructions. It can only be opened when you arrive." A man came forward next, mid-30s, lean, walking on forearm crutches with a steel prosthetic visible below his knee. He moved like he'd been doing it for years. "Declan Hayes," he said, sticking out a hand. "Civil engineer. Lost the leg on a bridge collapse in Pittsburgh 6 years ago. Your grandfather found me at the rehab facility. Offered me a workshop and a purpose. I run the dam and the power grid here." "The dam?" "Hydroelectric. Powers the whole community. We sell the surplus back to the county grid. Pays our taxes." I looked at him, at Eleanor, at the small crowd parting respectfully behind them. A young woman with a camera around her neck waved shyly from the porch. A man with flour on his apron tipped his head at me. A teenage girl with paint-stained hands grinned. These were not strangers. These were a family I had not yet met, a family that somehow knew my name. The community center was warm. A fire crackled in a stone hearth. The long pine table at the center was set with cups of coffee, a basket of fresh bread, a small bowl of honey. Sterling stepped back, giving me space. Eleanor placed a hand gently on my shoulder. "Here," she said. She slid a thick envelope across the table, cream-colored paper, sealed with red wax. My name on the front, Margot. Just Margot. Not Margot Whitlock. Not to my granddaughter. Not for our beloved Margot. Just Margot, the way my grandfather used to say it when I was a little girl, and we sat together at the kitchen table with crayons and graph paper. Just Margot. I broke the seal. "My dearest Margot. If you're reading this, then Sterling has done what I asked him to do. He has brought you home." Yes, home. That is the word I want to use. You won't remember this, but when you were 10 years old, you sat on my back porch and drew a picture of a perfect town. A town with gardens in the middle, where people grew their own food. A town with houses small enough to be loved. A town with a river that gave power, and a forest that gave silence. You drew it with red crayon, and you said, "Grandpa, when I grow up, this is where I want everybody to live." I never forgot that drawing. I never forgot you. When the others, your cousins, your uncles, your father became who they became, I made a decision. I would not waste my fortune on people who would only use it to build walls. I would spend it on the one child in my bloodline who had ever in her whole life wanted to build something instead. For 15 years I have built your town. I called it Willowbrook Sanctuary. There are 60 homes here now. There are people who needed second chances and found them. There is a school, a garden, a workshop, a clinic, a river that powers everything. It is yours, not given, earned. You earned it the day you were 10 years old, and you used the word everybody. The bulk of my paper fortune, the millions, everyone laughed about. I left to Preston and your other cousins because money is what they understand, and money is what will eventually destroy them. To you, my dear girl, I leave the only thing that was ever truly mine, a living legacy, and the responsibility of carrying it forward. The dollar coin you hold in your hand is not an insult. It is a key. It will open more doors than you can imagine. Some of them are doors you do not yet know exist. Trust Sterling. Trust Eleanor. Trust Declan. They have been holding this place together while I was sick. Now it is your turn. And Margot, listen to me carefully. There will be people who try to take this from you. Family, strangers, powerful men in expensive suits. They will offer you money. They will make threats. They will not stop. Do not sell. Do not bend. Do not blink. Because everything you need, my brave girl, you have already had since you were 10 years old. You just had to come home to find it. With all the love I never said out loud while I was alive. Your grandfather, Cornelius. I lowered the letter. I didn't realize I was crying until Eleanor pressed a clean handkerchief into my hand. The fire crackled. Outside, the rain had stopped. A shaft of late afternoon sun came through the window and landed across the table exactly on the spot where the coin sat. C.W. Cornelius Whitlock, the man who never called me on my birthdays, because every single time at the last second he hung up, because he was ashamed of what they had done to me, because he was busy building me a world. That night, Sterling drove me back to my apartment to pack a small bag. He didn't say much. He didn't have to. I climbed 3 flights of stairs, stood in the doorway of the tiny living room, looked at the pull-out couch where I'd been sleeping for 2 years, looked at the photograph of Theo and Wren on the windowsill, looked at the dollar coin still warm in my closed fist. I sat down on the edge of the couch. I covered my face with both hands, and I let myself finally completely breathe. The court took my children, but maybe. I had just been handed the one thing that could bring them back. A house with bedrooms, a community with a school, a trust fund that could pay for everything the judge said I lacked. Stability. I uncovered my face, looked at the coin in my palm. "Hi, Grandpa," I whispered. The lamp on the side table flickered once, the way lamps do sometimes in old apartments. I chose to believe it was him. I packed a bag, a toothbrush, 2 changes of clothes, the photo of my children. I locked the apartment behind me, and as Sterling Ashford's Audi pulled away from that crumbling curb, I looked back at the windows of my old life. The 1 bedroom with the pull-out couch and the cracked window and the eviction notices stacked on the counter, and I did something I hadn't done in 3 years. I smiled. A real one. A small, scared, hopeful, real one. Because somewhere in a green valley, an hour and a lifetime away, 60 little houses were waiting. A river was waiting. A community was waiting. A grandfather's promise was waiting. And for the first time since the lawyer slid that single coin across the polished mahogany table, for the first time since the courtroom and the gavel and the laughter, I felt something I had forgotten how to feel. I felt found. My first morning at Willowbrook, I woke up confused. Sunlight on a quilt I didn't own. Birds outside a window I didn't recognize. The smell of cedar and wood smoke. For 3 full seconds, I forgot where I was. Then I remembered. The trustee cabin. The bedroom with the patchwork blanket. The valley below. The community waiting for me to wake up and decide what to do with the rest of my life. I sat up, pressed the heels of my hands into my eyes. Okay, Margot. You can do this. You don't know what this is, but you can do this. There was a knock on the front porch. Soft. 3 times. I padded barefoot to the door. Opened it. Eleanor Brooks, standing there with a tin coffee pot and a basket covered with a checkered cloth. "Thought you might need breakfast before the morning meeting," she said. "Morning meeting. 8 o'clock, every day. Community council. You're the chair." "I'm the what?" She smiled, a slow, patient smile, the kind a person earns over a long lifetime of patching up other people's wounds. "Honey," she said, "drink the coffee first." The council met in the community center. About 20 people, old, young, in between. A man named Hector with sun-leathered hands. A young woman named Lila teaching the school. A grandmother named Inez who ran the kitchen. A teenager named Otto who was learning the dam systems from Declan. They didn't ask me to lead. They asked me to listen. So I listened. For 2 hours, I sat at the head of a long pine table, and I listened. About a leak in the roof of House 17. About the strawberry beds needing fresh mulch. About the autumn farmers market in town, and who could drive the produce truck. About a new family who had applied for residency. A widow and her 2 grandchildren from Ohio. And they looked at me. For decisions. For approval, for yes or no. Me, Margot Whitlock, who hadn't been allowed to decide what dinner her own family ate in 5 years. I said yes to the strawberries. I said yes to the widow. I said yes to the roof repair. And when the meeting ended, Eleanor squeezed my shoulder as she walked past. "You did fine," she whispered. I almost cried into my coffee cup. Sterling came by that afternoon with a binder, a thick one, the trust documents. "Take your time," he said. "Read it. Ask me anything. There is no quiz." I opened the binder at the kitchen table. Page 1. The Willowbrook Sanctuary Trust. Page 2. 2,000 acres. Held in protected status, cannot be sold without unanimous consent of all residents, plus the trustee. Page 3. Operating budget, $600,000 a year. Self-sustaining through hydroelectric sales produce crafts. Page 4. Trustee stipend. I read it twice. I read it 3 times. I closed the binder. I opened it again. I read it a 4th time out loud just to make sure the words were real. $15,000 per month, I said. Sterling looked up from his own paperwork. Yes. Per month. Yes. Sterling, $15,000 per month is more than I made in an entire year at the diner. I am aware. This can't be real. It is real. I have been counting quarters to do laundry for 3 years. I know. My daughter has been wearing shoes a size too small because I couldn't afford new ones until next paycheck. His voice softened. Margot, I know. I covered my face, not crying, just breathing, just trying to fit this much air into a chest that had been built for less. There's health care too, Sterling added gently. For you and your children, full coverage, and an educational trust. Theo's college, Wren's college, both of them, already funded, already in their names. I lowered my hands. Their names. Their names. Your grandfather set those accounts up the year each of them was born. The year each of them was born, when I hadn't spoken to him in years, when I thought he didn't even remember. I put my forehead down on the open binder, and I cried for the 3rd time in 2 days. Quiet, steady. The kind of crying that isn't sad anymore. The kind of crying that is just a body finally being allowed to release a weight it didn't know it had been carrying. Sterling didn't say a word. He just slid a clean handkerchief across the table. I was starting to wonder how many of those he kept on him. That night I called Theo from the communications building. The satellite line crackled. "Mom." "Hi, baby. Where are you? Dad said your phone is dead. There's no cell service where I am right now. But listen, Theo, I need to tell you something." "Okay." "Something good happened." A pause. Define good. He sounded so much like me when he said that. Wary. Tired of hoping. "Theo, I think I might be able to file for a custody review." A longer pause. "You're serious?" "Very." "Why?" "Because your great-grandfather left me a place, a home, and money. Real money." Silence. "Is this a scam, Mom?" I laughed. Right out loud. The first laugh in days. "No, baby. It is not a scam." "You're sure?" "I'm sure." "Can Ren come to the phone?" Put her on. A scuffle. A giggle. And then, "Mama." "Hi, baby." "Mama, my tooth came out." "What?" "My front one, the wobbly one. It came out at recess. I put it in my pocket, but then I lost the pocket." "How do you lose a pocket, sweetheart?" "I just did." I laughed again, harder, with my whole face. "I love you, Ren." "I love you too, Mama." "I'm going to see you Saturday." "Promise." "Promise." She hung up before I could say anything else. 8-year-olds. I sat in the dark wooden booth of the communications building, holding the dead receiver against my ear, and I let myself smile for about 30 seconds straight. The phone rang again the very next morning, a number I didn't recognize. "Hello." "Margot, it's Preston." My stomach dropped 12 floors. "How did you get this number?" "I have my ways. What do you want?" "I want to talk to you about that property. It's not for sale. You haven't heard my offer. I don't need to. $5 million. I went very still. $5 million. $5 million. For a girl who counted quarters to do laundry. For a mother who lost custody because her apartment was too small. For a woman who had been laughed at across a mahogany table 48 hours earlier. $5 million. "Margot," Preston said. Sweet now, almost tender. The voice he used when we were kids and he wanted me to do his homework. "Think about what that money could do. The children. A real house. Private school. A future. You're a single mother. You don't have a future." I held the phone to my ear. I closed my eyes. I saw my grandfather's handwriting. "Do not sell. Do not bend. Do not blink." "Preston." "Yes, sweetheart." "How did you know I have custody problems?" A beat of silence. Just one. Just enough. "Garrett mentioned it." The room went cold. "You've been talking to Garrett." "We have mutual acquaintances." "You've been talking to my ex-husband." "Margot, don't be paranoid." "Don't call me again." I hung up. I stood in the communications booth with my hand still on the receiver for a full minute, maybe 2. Garrett and Preston. How long? How long had they been talking? I felt something move in my chest. Something cold, something old, something that I realized had probably been there for a long time without me noticing. It wasn't fear. It was clarity. Declan found me at the dam an hour later. I was just standing there, watching the water come over the spillway, listening to the low hum of the turbines. "You okay?" he asked. "My cousin offered me $5 million for this place." Declan didn't flinch. He just leaned on his crutches, looked at the water. "That's pocket change," he said. "What?" "There's lithium under this valley, about 150 feet down. Big deposit. Apex Minerals has been sniffing around for 2 years. Your grandfather kept them out with the mineral rights deed." "How much is the lithium worth?" He shrugged. "Conservatively, 50 million, probably more. Battery production, clean energy. Everyone wants it." 50 million. And Preston offered me 5. I started to laugh. Not a happy laugh. A small, sharp, mean one. "He thinks I'm stupid." "He thinks you're desperate," Declan corrected. "There's a difference." I turned to him. The wind off the river lifted my hair. "Declan, what happens if I say no and he doesn't take no for an answer?" He looked at me a long moment. "Then we get ready." The next day, Sasha Lindgren came back from her field, surveying with a face the color of paper. She was the journalist, the one with the camera. Mid-20s. Tough little thing. Hiking boots and a top knot. She'd been documenting wildlife near the eastern boundary for a magazine piece. She walked into the community center, dropped her camera bag on the table. "I need to show you something." She pulled up images on her laptop. 3 men. Apex Minerals jackets, surveying equipment, standing right at the edge of the western embankment of the dam, measuring, taking water samples, touching the spillway control housing. "When was this?" I said. "This afternoon, 3 o'clock. I was photographing a heron." "Did they see you?" "I'm very good at not being seen." Declan came in, looked at the photos, went a shade paler. They were inside the spillway housing, inside around all of it. "That's the emergency release mechanism." I looked at him. He looked at me. We didn't say it out loud. We didn't have to. We doubled security that night. Declan set up trail cameras along the western boundary. Otto, his teenage apprentice, helped him program 2 of the small surveillance drones to fly automated patrol routes after dark. Sasha agreed to keep her camera ready and her hiking boots by the door. I lay in bed in the trustee cabin with the windows cracked open, listening to the night. Crickets, a whippoorwill far off, the low murmur of the river, and underneath all of it in my chest a steady drumbeat that wasn't going away. They were here. They had been at my dam. They had touched my spillway. My grandfather had said, "Do not blink." I wasn't going to blink. Saturday came, the day I had been waiting for since Monday morning. Garrett's silver SUV pulled into the gravel lot at 10 a.m. sharp. Wren tumbled out first like she always did. Curls flying, one sock missing, running. "Mama!" She slammed into me at full speed. I caught her. I held her. I smelled her hair, strawberry shampoo, and outside. Theo got out slower, backpack slung over one shoulder, trying to look 13, trying not to look excited. He failed. "Hey, Mom." "Hey, baby." Garrett climbed out last, wearing jeans for once, not a suit. He looked at the trees. He looked at the community center. He looked at the bell tower. I watched his face. I watched the very small recalculation happen behind his eyes. "Huh," he said. That was all he said. Huh. 9 years of marriage taught me what that one syllable meant. It meant he was rethinking everything. Good. He could rethink in his car on the way home. I gave them the tour. Ren went bananas. "Mama, there's a treehouse. Mama, there's a chicken. Mama, that boy has a slingshot. Mama, can I have a slingshot? Mama, those flowers are butterflies. Mama, Mama, Mama." Theo tried to stay cool. He lost his cool the second Declan said the word drone. "Wait, you have drones?" "7 of them. Custom builds. We use them for boundary patrol and damage surveys after storms." "Custom builds. Otto and I assemble them ourselves." "Who is Otto?" A teenage boy with a wrench in his back pocket appeared like he'd been waiting in the wings. "I'm Otto." "Hi." "Hi." 2 13-year-old boys. 1 wrench. 1 shared obsession with quadcopter rotors. Best friends inside of 14 seconds. I watched my son disappear into the workshop with Declan and Otto. Heard him laugh, actually laugh for the first time in months. A real surprise kid laugh, not the careful adult laugh he used at his father's house. Eleanor came up beside me. "He's going to be okay," she said. "How can you tell?" "Because purpose," she said. "Purpose is the medicine. The boy hasn't had any in a long time." I didn't answer. I just put my hand on Eleanor's arm and squeezed. Ren found Maya Brennan, or Maya Brennan found Ren. It was hard to tell. They locked eyes across the gravel path, and within 10 seconds they were holding hands and running toward the butterfly garden, like they'd been best friends since birth. "Maya is 9, Eleanor explained. "Her parents moved here last year. Father was in a serious accident. Couldn't work construction anymore. Your grandfather hired him to manage the orchard." "He hired everyone." "He hired the right people." I watched Ren and Maya disappear behind a hedgerow of zinnias. A hand slid into my pocket, the cool weight of the dollar coin. I held it. I rolled it between my fingers. I thought about my grandfather, sitting somewhere, years ago, maybe at a desk, maybe in a kitchen, drawing up the plans for a place where a tired single mother and her 2 kids could finally exhale. "Hi, Grandpa. You did good." Garrett didn't stay. He drove off at 10:15 and said he'd be back at 7. I watched the dust from his tires settle on the gravel road, and I let my children stay with me for 9 hours. We picked beans in the garden. We made cornbread with Inez. Theo helped Declan replace the motor on a drone. Ren named all 4 community kittens after Disney princesses. We ate dinner on the porch of the community center with 20 other people. Pulled pork, coleslaw, sweet tea, strawberry shortcake. I watched my kids eat seconds, then thirds, then dessert. I watched my son lean against a kitchen counter and ask Eleanor about her work as an ER nurse. She told him a story about a woman who came in once with a chicken bone lodged in her throat, and Theo laughed so hard he snorted iced tea up his nose. I watched my daughter sit in Maya's lap and braid daisies into her hair. I watched, and at 5:30, when the sun started to slant gold across the meadow, Ren climbed into my lap on the porch swing and looked up at me with very serious eyes. "Mama." "Yes, baby. Are we going to live here?" The question I had been waiting for, the question I had been dreading. "I'm working on it, sweetheart." "Why isn't it just yes?" "Because the judge has to say yes first." "Why doesn't the judge already know yes?" "Because the judge doesn't know what I just learned." She thought about this. Tell the judge, Mama. I will, baby. Tell the judge fast. I will. She put her head on my chest. She closed her eyes. And right there on a porch swing in a place I hadn't known existed 3 days earlier, with the smell of strawberries and pulled pork and wood smoke in the air, my 8-year-old daughter fell asleep against my heart. I didn't move for 45 minutes. I barely breathed. I didn't want to break the spell. The storm came on Tuesday. It rolled in fast, faster than the forecast. The sky went from blue to bruise in 20 minutes. Wind whipped through the valley. Trees bent. I was reviewing trust paperwork at the kitchen table when the first thunder hit and rattled every cup on the shelf. By 3 p.m. it was a downpour. By 4 it was a wall of water. By 5, Declan called me on the community radio. "Margot, get to the dam. Now." I grabbed a rain jacket. Ran out the door. The control room was lit red. Every monitor, every screen, red. Declan was hunched over the main panel, sweat on his forehead despite the cold. Spillway gates aren't responding. Manual override. Blocked. Blocked how? Someone wedged a steel bar across the control arm. I went still. Apex. Apex. How much time? At this rain rate, 90 minutes, maybe less, before the water tops the dam. I looked at the radar map on the wall screen. The storm was a fat red blob sitting directly over us, not moving. What do we do? Declan stood up, grabbed a wrench, grabbed a flashlight, grabbed his rain shell. We go into the spillway housing. We pull the bar by hand. And if that doesn't work, we open the western emergency gates manually. Where are those? On the embankment. Big iron wheel. You and me. We turn it until our arms fall off. I grabbed my coat. Let's go. Margot. What? Are you sure? Declan, are you sure? He almost smiled. Just checking. We ran. Through mud, through wind, through rain that hit sideways like it had something personal against us. The spillway housing was a low concrete bunker built into the face of the dam. Declan pried open the metal door. We dropped down inside. Water was already beginning to seep across the floor. The steel bar was wedged exactly where he said. It took both of us straining, both of us cursing, both of us getting our hands sliced by the rusted edge of that bar before it finally screeched free and clanged against the floor. Declan tried the manual override. It groaned. It stuck. It did not move. They corroded the mechanism, he said. Some kind of acid. This thing is welded shut. How? Slow drip. Over weeks. They've been here before Margot. He looked at me through the rain. They've been here a long time. The western emergency gates were a quarter mile up the dam wall. We slogged through ankle-deep mud. The dam was groaning beneath us, actually groaning low and animal as the water above pressed against it. We reached the iron wheel, 5 feet across, rusted, old. Both of us put our backs into it. It would not turn. Declan's prosthetic slipped in the mud. He went down hard on one knee, got back up, grabbed the wheel again. Together, he yelled over the rain. On 3. 1, 2, 3. We pulled. The wheel screamed. It moved 1 inch. We pulled again. 2 inches. 3. 4. A jet of water punched through the bottom gate, and we both fell backward, laughing. Actually laughing, the kind of crazed laugh you only have when you're soaked to the bone and the world is trying to kill you. And we kept turning. 5 inches. 6. 7. The water roared free. The pressure on the main dam dropped. Declan checked his radio. "Level stabilizing. We did it." I closed my eyes. I breathed. Then the alarm on his radio went off again. Different tone. He looked at the readout. The color drained from his face. "What?" "The western embankment." "What about it?" "It's failing." The valley emergency siren began to wail. Long, mournful, rising and falling over the storm. Declan grabbed my arm. "Get on the radio. Now. Tell everyone to move to higher ground." I grabbed the field radio off his belt. "All Willowbrook residents. This is Margot. The western embankment is failing. Move to the ridge. Move now. I repeat. Move to the ridge. Move now." I said it 3 times. I said it loud. I said it like a woman who was not going to lose anybody on her watch. We started running back toward the community. The community center had become an evacuation hub. Eleanor was at the front door with a clipboard. Calm, steady, checking off names as residents arrived from the lower paths. 3 families unaccounted for, she said the second she saw me. The Brennans, Maya, her parents. They were working on the orchard project today. Lowest elevation in the whole community. I didn't even take off my coat. "I'm going. Margot. I know where they are." Sasha grabbed her camera. Otto grabbed a coil of rope. Declan tried to come too. "No," I said. "Your leg, the mud. Stay. Coordinate." He didn't argue. He just looked at me. Really looked. "Be careful." "I will." The lower path was already underwater. 6 inches at first. Then 12. Then knee-deep. Then the current was strong enough to push back against me, and I had to brace against fence posts to keep my footing. The Brennan house was the smallest in the community. A 1-story cabin with a basement workshop where Mr. Brennan repaired tools. The water was already to the porch. I pounded on the door. "Brennans, get out now." No answer. I tried the door. Locked. I ran around the side, slipping in the mud, and found the bulkhead door to the basement workshop, already half submerged. I wrenched it open. Down inside the workshop, knee-deep in dirty water, I saw them. Mrs. Brennan trying to save tools. Mr. Brennan dragging a generator toward the stairs. Maya in the corner, eyes huge, holding a wet stuffed rabbit. "Out!" I shouted. "Out! Out! Out! The embankment is failing. We have minutes." Mrs. Brennan dropped the toolbox. We climbed the stairs. We got to the front porch. Just as the wall of water hit, the front window of the Brennan cabin blew inward. Water flooded the living room knee-deep in 3 seconds. The current outside was now waist-high on me, thigh-high on Mrs. Brennan, chest-high on Maya. "We have to walk to the ridge," I yelled. "Hold hands! We do not let go! Do you understand? Do not let go!" Mr. Brennan nodded. Mrs. Brennan grabbed Maya's hand. We waded out. The mud sucked at my boots. The water was cold enough to hurt. Branches and trash and pieces of someone's garden trellis floated past us in the rushing brown river that had been a gravel path 45 minutes ago. Halfway up the slope, Maya slipped. Her hand tore free from her mother's. The current took her 2 feet downstream before Mr. Brennan lunged and caught her by the collar of her overalls. She was screaming. Mrs. Brennan was screaming. The water was rising past Maya's chest, past her shoulders, up to her chin. She couldn't walk. She couldn't keep her feet on the bottom. Mrs. Brennan tried to lift her. Her arms gave out. She was exhausted. The water hit her chest and she stumbled. I didn't think. I just turned. I bent down. Maya, get on my back. Mama, get on my back, baby. Hold tight. Around my neck. Like a piggyback. Mr. Brennan lifted her. Maya wrapped her arms around my throat. Her wet stuffed rabbit pressed into my collarbone. I felt her small body shiver against my back. Otto looped his rope around all four of our waists, tying us into one chain. "Walk, Margot," he yelled. "Just walk." I walked. I do not know how long it took. I do not know how many times I almost went down. I do not know how many times my knees buckled, or how many times the cold water hit my face, or how many times my throat closed, because I thought I could not take one more step. But I know this. I did not let go. I did not let go. I did not let go. Maya cried into the back of my neck, and I felt her breath in my hair. And I felt her tiny fingers locked in the collar of my coat, and I walked. I walked. I walked. Through water that was trying to drown all five of us. Through wind that was trying to push us sideways into the trees. I walked. For my children who I could not lose. For this child who was not mine, but was depending on me anyway. For my grandfather who had built this place and trusted me to keep it standing. For myself. Because somewhere in those 45 minutes in the freezing water and the howling rain, something inside me that had been bent for a very long time straightened up, and it did not bend again. We made the ridge. People came running through the rain to meet us. Eleanor with blankets, Declan with a thermos, Sasha with the camera lowered, finally just running, just being a person. Hands lifted Maya from my back. Mrs. Brennan collapsed onto the wet grass and sobbed into her hands. Mr. Brennan grabbed my arm. He couldn't speak. He just gripped my arm and shook his head over and over, like he was trying to thank me in a language nobody had invented yet. Eleanor wrapped a blanket around my shoulders. I sat down hard on a fallen log. My legs would not hold me anymore. I started to cry, not from fear, not from cold. I cried because the only thought in my head, the only sentence my whole brain could form was this: I did it. I did it. I did it. The storm passed before dawn. By morning, the sky was clean blue and the river had crested and started to fall. 12 homes were damaged. 3 were destroyed. The orchard was underwater. The community gardens were churned mud. Nobody died. Nobody was even seriously hurt. Eleanor walked through the survey with me at sunrise, holding a clipboard, pointing at structures, calmly assigning teams. "This is going to take months," she said. "Then we take months." She glanced at me. "You look different this morning." "I feel different." "Good," she said. "That's the trustee." Sasha came up the path with her camera. "Margot, you need to see this." She showed me the night footage from the surveillance drones. 2 Apex Minerals. Pickup trucks. Driving along the western boundary at 11 p.m., the night before the storm, stopping near the spillway housing. 2 men getting out, one of them carrying what looked like a steel bar, the other carrying a spray bottle, time-stamped, date-stamped, clear as glass. I looked at Sasha. She looked at me. "We have them," she whispered. "We have them." Theo's drone survey started before lunch. He came up from his father's house the second he heard about the flood. Garrett actually drove him to the ridge himself, the road being washed out, and he came with 2 backpacks, one with clothes, one with drone parts. He spent 8 hours mapping every damaged structure from the air. He delivered the data to Declan in a clean little spreadsheet. He didn't ask permission to stay overnight. He just stayed. I caught him at sundown sitting on the porch of the trustee cabin with a cup of cocoa Eleanor had pressed into his hands, looking out over the valley. "Mom." "Yeah, baby." "This place." "Yeah. This place is real." "I know." He took a sip of his cocoa. "I want to live here." I didn't say anything. I just sat down next to him. I just leaned my shoulder against his shoulder, and we watched the first fireflies of the night rise up out of the wet grass. The hidden chamber was Theo's discovery. Of course it was. 2 days after the flood and the cleanup of the community center basement, the floodwater had shifted a section of concrete near the storage room, revealed a thin metal plate with a circular indentation, exactly the size of my dollar coin. Theo found it first. He came running. "Mom, Mom, Mom, you need to see this." I came. Declan came. Sterling came. The coin slid into the slot. A soft click, a hidden lever, a staircase down into the dark. We went down. A small chamber, steel-lined, dry as a bone, untouched since 1944. In the center on a pedestal was a single titanium tube, sealed, waiting, 60 years old, waiting for me. I stepped forward. I pressed the coin into the slot at the top of the tube. Hiss. The seal broke. I lifted the lid. Inside, a leather portfolio, a waterproof case of USB drives, and a single envelope, cream paper, red wax, my name, Margot, just Margot. I sat down on the concrete floor of that hidden chamber, surrounded by my son and my engineer and my grandfather's lawyer, and I broke the seal. I started to read. And what I read in that letter, what was in those portfolios, what was on those USB drives, would change everything. Not just for me, not just for Willowbrook, but for a man named Garrett Sinclair, who had been lying to me for a very, very long time. The letter was short. My grandfather did not waste word. "My dearest Margot, if you have found this chamber, then a great deal has happened. I am sorry that I could not be there to walk you through it in person. I am sorry that you had to discover what you are about to discover the hard way. The portfolio contains treasury bonds, issued in 1944, purchased by my own father during the war. They have been compounding interest ever since. As of my last accounting, their value exceeds $60 million. I never cashed them. I never needed to. They were always meant for you. The USB drives contain 30 years of documentation, soil tests, water samples, internal Apex Minerals memos, sworn affidavits from former employees, evidence of environmental crimes so extensive that the Environmental Protection Agency will not be able to ignore them. I gathered all of this slowly, carefully, over decades, because I knew, my brave girl, that the day would come when our cousin Preston would try to take Willowbrook from us. And Margot, I have to tell you something that will hurt. Look at the third drive, the one marked S. It contains transcripts, phone calls, bank records. It contains the truth about your former husband. I'm so sorry to be the one telling you. I tried to protect you while I was alive. I failed. You will not fail. Trust Sterling. Trust Eleanor. Trust yourself, your grandfather Cornelius. I lowered the letter. The chamber was very quiet. Theo had wandered to the corner examining the old steel walls. Declan was respectfully studying the ceiling. Sterling stood with his hands folded, waiting. Sterling. Yes. What is on the drive marked S? A long pause. Bank records, Margot. From your husband. Ex-husband. From your ex-husband. To an offshore account controlled by Preston's company. The room tilted. I sat down on the cold concrete floor. How long? Sterling looked at the wall, then at me. He had been waiting, I realized, for the right moment. There was never going to be a right moment. 18 months. 18 months. Before the custody hearing. Yes. Before. Yes, Margot. I covered my face with both hands. 18 months. Garrett had been on Preston's payroll for 18 months. Garrett had filed for primary custody 9 months ago, which meant that when he stood up in court and told the judge I was unstable, when he stood up in court and told the judge I worked variable shifts, when he stood up in court and told the judge my apartment was too small, he had already cashed the first check. I did not cry. I should have cried. But the part of me that cried in courtrooms had drowned in floodwater 2 days earlier. What rose up instead was something quieter, colder, older, something that had been waiting in the basement of my own chest for a very long time. I lowered my hands. Sterling. Yes. Get me every document you have. All of it. All of it. Tonight. Yes, Margot. And Sterling. Yes. I want the custody review filed by Monday morning. He nodded. Just once. He nodded the way a man nods when his commanding officer has just given an order he was hoping she would give. Preston went on the offensive first. He always did. It was Tuesday morning when I got the call from Sterling. Emergency county board meeting. 3 p.m. They were going to vote on the validity of my grandfather's 1931 mineral rights deed. That deed is airtight, I said. Legally, yes. Then what is this? This is what people do, Margot, when they cannot beat you in a courtroom. They go around the courtroom. How many board members are on Preston's payroll? My estimate is 3 of 7. Out of 7? Yes. That's enough to lose the vote. Yes. I closed my eyes. I was sitting on the back porch of the trustee cabin. The morning was cool. The valley below was full of people rebuilding. Hammers, saws, a child laughing somewhere near the orchard. Sterling. Yes. They're going to take it. They're going to try. How long until they win the vote? This afternoon. Then what? Then we appeal to the state. But it could take months. And in the meantime, they may be able to legally blockade the access road to enforce the ruling. Blockade. With private security contractors. They are going to surround my home with armed men. They are going to try. I opened my eyes. I looked out over the valley. I thought about Eleanor making coffee in the community kitchen, about Declan teaching Otto how to weld a generator housing, about Maya Brennan sitting in my lap on the porch swing the morning after the flood, asking me very seriously whether her stuffed rabbit was going to be okay. I thought about Wren's missing front tooth. I thought about Theo saying this place is real. I thought about my grandfather sitting at a desk somewhere in the late 1940s, choosing not to cash a bond, choosing instead to hide it under a community center that would not be built for another 50 years. For me. Sterling. Yes. Let them blockade. I'm sorry. Let them. Let them put guards on the road. Let them think they have won. Margot. Because while they're standing on a road with rifles, you and I are going to the federal government. A long pause. You want to leapfrog the state. I want to call the EPA. I want to call the FBI. I want a press conference. I want Sasha Lindgren's footage of those men at my spillway on every news channel in the country by Friday." Another pause. I could hear Sterling smiling through the phone. I had never heard a person smile through a phone before. It is a particular sound. "Yes, Margot." "Make the calls." "I will." I hung up. I stood up. I walked into the trustee cabin. I looked in the mirror over the kitchen sink. The woman looking back at me had wet hair from her morning shower and shadows under her eyes from 48 hours of bad sleep. And she was not the woman who had walked out of a courtroom 3 weeks ago in a navy blue dress from the consignment shop. She was a stranger I was going to learn to live with for the rest of my life. Preston's lawyer was a snake in human skin. I sat at the back of the county board chamber that afternoon, and I watched him stand up in his $9,000 suit and explain to the board that my grandfather's 1931 mineral rights deed had not been properly renewed. He used the words regrettably and unfortunately, and the law is what it is. He looked at me twice during his speech. The first time he smiled. The second time he winked. He actually winked. The same wink Preston had given me across the conference table at the will reading. A family wink. Sterling rose to respond. Sterling was brilliant. Sterling cited precedent and statute and a 1956 Supreme Court ruling. It did not matter. The board voted 4-3. The deed was suspended pending state review. 3 board members refused to look at me as they cast their yes votes. 3 board members had been bought. The gavel came down. I walked out of that chamber the same way I had walked out of the will reading. Head high, mouth shut, coin in my pocket. The blockade went up that night. 2 black SUVs, 6 men in tactical vests with badges that said Northridge Security in white letters, standing at the entrance to the access road that led down into Willowbrook Valley. They let residents leave. They inspected every vehicle that tried to come in. They told the Brennans they could not have their elderly relatives visit on Sunday because of pending litigation. They told the produce truck driver he could not deliver supplies. They told Sasha Lindgren that her camera was a violation of private security protocol and that they would seize it if she pointed it at them again. She pointed it at them again immediately. They did not seize it. She is a small woman with very good instincts. I watched her come back up the road at sunset with a memory card hidden in her sock and a grin on her face. "Got them on tape," she said. "Every one of them, with their badge numbers, with their license plates. Good work. Better than good. Forgiven." She walked off to upload the footage. That night was the worst night. Not the storm, not the flood, not even the will reading. That night. Because that night I sat in the trustee cabin alone with a satellite phone in my hand, and I called my children. Garrett picked up. "Margot, I want to talk to my children. It's late. It's 8 p.m. They're asleep. Garrett, they are tired. They had a long day at school. I know about the money." A silence so total I could hear the cicadas outside his window through the phone. "What money?" 18 months, Garrett. 18 months of payments from Preston. You want me to tell you the amounts? I can. Sterling printed me a spreadsheet. The silence held. Then, "You don't understand." "Oh, I understand. I understand fine. You sold your kid's mother to your wife's cousin for $500,000. Margot, you stood in a courtroom and lied about me. You told the judge I was unstable. You told the judge I was unfit. While you knew. While there was a check in your jacket pocket from the man who was already planning to flood my home. Margot, I never knew about the dam. I do not care. I never. I do not care what you knew, Garrett. I do not care what you didn't know. I care that you took money from him. I care that you took my children from me on purpose. I care that you sat across the table from me at brunch one Sunday morning 8 months ago, and you smiled at me, and you handed our son a pancake, and the entire time you had an offshore account with Preston's name behind it. A long, broken pause. I'll let you talk to Theo. I want to talk to Theo, and then Ren, and then I want you to know something. Are you listening? I'm listening. I am going to take my children back, legally, fairly, with evidence, with a real lawyer, with a real home. And when I do, I am not going to keep them from you, Garrett, because I am not you. I hung up. I sat in the dark. I put the satellite phone down on the table. I covered my face with both hands, and I did not cry exactly. I did something else. I made a sound, a small, ragged animal sound that came out of a place inside me I had not visited in many years. Then I stood up. I walked to the window. I looked down at the valley. Lanterns on porches, smoke from chimneys, a guitar somewhere faintly. Eleanor was walking up the gravel path toward my cabin. She had seen the light on. She had come. She knocked. She did not wait for me to answer. She came in. She sat down across from me at the kitchen table. She did not speak. She just sat with me for a long time. Finally, very gently, she said, "Honey, yeah, your grandfather chose you for a reason. Tell me the reason." She reached across the table, took both my hands in hers. "Because you understand," she said, "that the real victory is not destroying the people who hurt you. The real victory is refusing to become them." I looked at her. I did not speak. She did not let go of my hands. We sat like that for a long time. The cicadas sang outside, and eventually I exhaled. The federal investigation moved fast. Sterling had been preparing for it for 10 years, it turned out. He had file boxes in his office labeled Apex Emergency. He had contacts at the EPA. He had a friend who was now a senior counsel at the Department of Justice. By Thursday morning, federal agents were executing search warrants at Apex Minerals' corporate headquarters. By Thursday afternoon, the company's stock had dropped 41%. By Thursday evening, Sasha Lindgren's article with photographs with timestamps with my own face on the front page beside the headline, "The Woman Who Inherited $1," was on the homepage of every major newspaper in the country. By Friday morning, the local news station was parked outside the entrance to Willowbrook Sanctuary. The blockade quietly went away. The security contractors got into their black SUVs at 3 a.m. and drove off. Nobody waved goodbye. Adelaide Pierce called me on Saturday. I had never heard the name before. She was 65. She had been Preston's executive assistant for 32 years. He had fired her 4 months ago without a severance package after she had walked in on a conversation she was not meant to overhear. She had been waiting for someone to ask. Sterling had asked. She had said yes. "Mrs. Whitlock," she said on the phone. Her voice was thin, careful. She was sitting in a kitchen somewhere in upstate New York. "Mrs. Whitlock, I have recordings." Recordings. Phone calls. Mr. Whitlock on conference calls he didn't know I was monitoring. Calls about the dam. "You have recordings of Preston ordering the sabotage." "I have one specific recording. 3 weeks before the storm. Mr. Whitlock instructing a man named Halverson to, quote, make sure the spillway has an unfortunate failure during the next major rain event." I closed my eyes. "Mrs. Pierce." "Adelaide, please." Adelaide, will you testify? A small pause. Yes. On national television. A smaller pause. Yes. Adelaide, why? A long breath. Because 32 years of service to that man. 32 years of typing his memos and booking his flights and saying, "Yes, sir." And the day I walked in on a phone call I wasn't supposed to hear, he fired me by email. He did not even look me in the eye. He did not even thank me. She paused. I am 65 years old. I do not have many years of doing the right thing left to me. I would like to spend them doing it. I held the phone to my ear. I did not say anything. There was nothing to say. Sometimes the universe sends you exactly the woman it has been preparing for 32 years. The press conference was on Monday. I wore a navy blazer Eleanor had pressed for me that morning. I did not wear a single piece of jewelry. I did not put on lipstick. I stood at a microphone in front of the community center. Adelaide stood to my right. Sterling stood to my left. Behind me in a long, quiet row stood Eleanor and Declan, and Sasha, and Otto, and Hector, and Ines, and Lila, and every other resident of Willowbrook who had asked themselves to be on that porch when I spoke. I did not give a speech. I gave 4 sentences. My name is Margot Whitlock. Earlier this year, my grandfather left me $1. Today, my cousin Preston Whitlock is under federal investigation for attempted environmental sabotage. We have evidence. That was all I said. I stepped back. Adelaide stepped forward. She told the rest. The recording played from a speaker behind us. Preston's voice, clear as glass. Make sure the spillway has an unfortunate failure during the next major rain event. The reporters did not blink. The cameras did not blink. The story went, as they say, viral. Preston was indicted by a federal grand jury 6 days later. 3 other Apex Minerals executives were indicted alongside him. The mineral rights case was reviewed at the state level, reinstated. The 4 county board members who had voted against me were referred for ethics investigations. None of this happened in a single moment. It happened slowly, over weeks, the way real justice happens. Not loud, not satisfying, just steady, like a river wearing down a stone. The custody review hearing was scheduled for the second Tuesday in September. Judge Klein again, the same courtroom, the same hard bench. I wore a different dress this time, a gray one, bought at a real store, without a stain. Garrett walked in alone. No lawyer, I noticed. Sterling noticed. Judge Klein, who notices everything, noticed. I learned later that Whitaker had withdrawn from the case 3 days earlier, citing what his firm politely called irreconcilable differences regarding strategy. In plain English, Whitaker had refused to put a man on the stand who was about to confess to perjury. She called the proceedings to order. She read the petition. She looked at me over her glasses. "Ms. Whitlock, you may present your case for reconsideration." Sterling rose. He laid out the facts: the trust, the stipend, the cabin, the school, the trustees of Willowbrook, the character references, 41 of them signed and notarized. He laid out the children's preferences, documented by an independent court evaluator who had visited Willowbrook the previous week. He laid out the changed circumstances. He sat down. Judge Klein looked at Garrett. "Mr. Sinclair." Garrett stood up. He did not have notes. He did not have a lawyer. He had nothing in his hands but his hands. "Your Honor." He stopped. He swallowed. He looked at me. I did not look back at him. Your Honor, I would like to make a statement. Proceed. I have not been honest with this court. The room shifted. I felt it, like air pressure changing before a storm. For approximately 18 months prior to this court's initial custody ruling, I was receiving payments from a corporate entity controlled by my ex-wife's cousin. The purpose of those payments was to assist in obtaining primary custody of our children, so that ultimately pressure could be applied to my ex-wife to sell certain real estate she had recently inherited. I sat very still. Theo, somewhere in the visitors' gallery behind me, I had not let him come, but he had taken the bus by himself anyway, sat very still. Wren at home with Eleanor was somewhere drawing pictures. She would learn about this later. From me. Judge Klein removed her glasses. She did not speak. She let Garrett keep going. I lied to this court. I lied about my ex-wife's capacity as a parent. I lied about her stability. I lied about my own motives. I exploited the financial disparity between us, which I had personally helped to create through 9 years of marriage, to take my children from a woman who, by every measure of love and devotion, was their better parent. He paused. He looked down at his shoes. I am not asking the court to forgive me. I am asking the court to grant my ex-wife full primary custody, effective immediately. I will accept supervised visitation. I will accept whatever this court chooses to impose. I will not contest anything she requests. He sat down. The room was silent. The room was silent for a long time. Judge Klein looked at me. She looked at me for what felt like a very long time. Then she looked at Garrett. Mr. Sinclair. Yes, Your Honor. You will be hearing from the district attorney's office about possible criminal charges related to perjury, fraud, and conspiracy. Yes, Your Honor. Are you prepared for that? Yes, Your Honor. You are not asking for leniency. No, Your Honor. Why? A long pause. Garrett did not look at me. He looked at the judge. Because my son asked me a question yesterday. Your Honor, he asked me if I sold his mother for money, and I told him the truth. And he told me he is 13 years old. He told me then the right thing to do is to give her back. The room was very quiet. Garrett swallowed. He is right, Your Honor. He is right. Judge Klein lowered her gaze to her bench. She took a breath. She lifted her gavel. Primary physical custody is restored to Ms. Whitlock effective today. Mr. Sinclair shall have supervised visitation of 2 hours per week, pending the outcome of any criminal proceedings. This court is adjourned. The gavel came down. I did not move. I could not move. A hand touched my shoulder. I turned. Theo, 13 years old, standing behind me with the public bus pass still in his hand. He did not say anything. He just put his arms around my neck, and he held on. That night in the trustee cabin, I cooked dinner for my children. I cooked spaghetti with sauce, with garlic bread, with a salad nobody ate. Wren sat on the kitchen counter in her pajamas and stirred the pot with a wooden spoon that was too big for her. Theo set the table. Plates, forks, cloth napkins. He had found cloth napkins somewhere. He had ironed them himself. 13-year-olds, when given the right circumstances, will iron a napkin. Eleanor came by with a basket of fresh peaches. Did not stay. Knew not to. Declan came by to drop off a small wrapped package for Theo. A custom set of drone tools, the kind a professional uses. Did not stay. Knew not to. Sasha came by with her camera and did not take a single photo, just leaned in the doorway, smiled, left. After dinner, we ate ice cream on the porch. Wren put her head in my lap. Theo sat on the top step with a peach in his hand, looking out over the valley. The fireflies were rising. The river was murmuring. The stars were doing what stars do. "Mom." "Yeah, baby." "Are we home?" I thought about it. I thought about it for a long time before I answered. "Yeah, Theo. Yeah. We are home." But the story did not end at that dinner table, because building a future is one thing, and making sure other people can do it too, that is something else. That is the harder work. 6 months later, I stood on the same porch. A different kind of crowd had gathered in the valley below, not just Willowbrook residents, reporters, state officials, 2 senators, a representative from the EPA, 3 women who had driven from Kentucky to attend women who had read about Willowbrook in the newspaper and wanted more than anything to know how a place like this could exist for them, too. We had built more cabins, repaired the dam, reinforced the embankment with proper engineering this time. Otto had graduated from Declan's apprenticeship and was now running a junior engineering program for visiting students. Theo had taken first place at the regional STEM competition for his drone surveillance system. The local newspaper had run his picture on the front page. He had pretended not to care. He had kept the clipping under his pillow. Wren had grown 2 inches and lost 2 more teeth. Sterling had cut his other clients back to a handful. He spent 4 days a week at Willowbrook now. He said his wife was happier. He said he was happier. Eleanor had a small clinic of her own downstairs in the community center. She saw patients every Tuesday and Thursday. Declan had begun very quietly to teach Otto how to swim in the river. The Cornelius Trust, named for my grandfather, had been formally established the month before. Its mission was simple: to help single mothers, women aging out of unsafe living situations, and people who had simply been broken by the wrong kind of luck, build sustainable communities modeled after Willowbrook. The first sister community was breaking ground in October. It was in eastern Kentucky, a former mining town. The people who lived there had asked for it themselves. I stepped up to the microphone on the porch of the community center. I did not have notes. I did not need them. Earlier this year, I said I was handed a single dollar by a lawyer, and I was told that this was my inheritance. The people who handed me that dollar laughed at me. They thought it was an insult. They thought it was the end of something. I held the coin up in my hand. The afternoon sun caught the edge. C.W. Cornelius Whitlock, the man who never said the word love when he was alive, the man who built me a world instead. They were wrong. They were wrong about a great many things, the most important being this. They believed wealth was a number in a bank account. My grandfather knew better. He spent the last 15 years of his life proving them wrong. He spent it building this valley. He spent it finding the right people. He spent it preparing a place where a person like me, a single mother broken open, laughed out of her own family, could come home. I looked out at the faces in the crowd. I saw Eleanor. I saw Declan. I saw Sasha. I saw Adelaide Pierce, who had moved into Cabin 12 in November and who now ran the community's volunteer office. I saw the Brennans. Maya holding her mother's hand, wearing a yellow dress. I saw Theo and Wren sitting in the front row, my daughter on my son's lap, both of them watching me with the same eyes. My grandfather's eyes, I realized for the very first time. They had his eyes. They had always had his eyes. I went on. Today we are announcing the formal establishment of the Cornelius Trust. It will fund 5 new communities like this one over the next 3 years, including the first sister community in Kentucky, which begins construction this fall. We are calling it the Sanctuary Network, because that in the end is what my grandfather built. Not a community, a sanctuary. I took a breath, took a sip, and to anyone listening today, anyone watching this on a phone in a parking lot during your lunch break, anyone who has ever been laughed at across a polished mahogany table, anyone whose inheritance was a $1 coin, listen to me. I let the silence sit. Your worth is not what they say it is. I said it again, louder. Your worth is not what they say it is. I lowered the microphone. The applause came. It came from 1,000 directions at once. I let it come. I did not bow. I did not smile. I just stood there, letting it land. That evening, after the speeches and the food and the press, I walked into the community center alone. A small wooden frame had been mounted by the front door earlier that day, a circular opening at the center, waiting. I took the dollar coin out of my pocket. I held it in my palm for a moment. I turned it. Something caught the light, something I had not noticed before. I lifted the coin closer to my eyes, on the rim, on the inside curve where no thumb ever rests, where no eye ever looks. In letters so small, I would have needed a magnifying glass to read them properly. I read them anyway. My grandfather's handwriting, engraved by hand. It is not the coin that opens this place, Margot. It is your heart. The coin was only the excuse you needed to believe in yourself. I read it once. I read it twice. I closed my fist around the coin so tightly, I felt the engraving press into my palm, the way a fingerprint presses, the way a memory presses, the way a grandfather's hand might press one last time into the hand of a granddaughter he never told he loved. I did not cry. I did not cry, because there was nothing left to cry. I just stood there, in the warm, wooden light of the community center, with 20 years of grief and 3 years of fear and many months of fight folded into a single hot point of light at the center of my chest. And then I slid the coin into the frame. Click. It locked into place. It would never come out again. It belonged here now, just like I did. I walked out onto the porch. The valley was full of fireflies. A guitar was playing somewhere. A child was laughing somewhere. Theo was on the lawn showing one of the Kentucky women how to fly a drone. Ren was running barefoot through the grass with Maya, both of them holding lanterns, both of them shrieking. Eleanor sat on the porch swing with a glass of lemonade. She patted the seat beside her. I sat down. She did not say anything. She did not have to. I rested my head on her shoulder, the way a daughter rests her head on a mother's shoulder, the way I had never gotten to rest my head on my own mother's shoulder, because my own mother had been a hard woman who had walked out of my childhood and into a new marriage many years ago and who had never looked back. But Eleanor was here, and the porch was warm, and the valley was full of fireflies, and somewhere in a community center behind me, a coin worth $1 was hanging in a wooden frame on a wall, a coin that had unlocked a gate, a coin that had unlocked a dam, a coin that had unlocked a chamber, a coin that had unlocked a future, a coin that had unlocked, finally, the door inside my own chest that had been locked shut since the day I was a little girl who drew a town in red crayon and said, "Grandpa, when I grow up, this is where I want everybody to live." I looked up at the sky. The first star was out. I said it out loud. Just once. Just to the night. "Hi, Grandpa." The fireflies rose. The river ran. The valley breathed. And for the first time in 32 years, so did I.